Hello and welcome to today's Bible reading. My name is Mahari Foster and I am so delighted to read 2 Samuel chapter 15 from the New King James Version with you today. In this chapter, Absalom rebels and he intends greatly to be king. Does he become king? And what is he willing to do and sacrifice in order to push his own intentions? After this, it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was, whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" And he would say, "Your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel." Let's pause there. So in verse 2, we find that Absalom rises early and he stands beside the way to the gate. Now, although we have persons who will rise early to do good, there are persons as well who will rise early to do evil. So, though we find that in our good, we try to do things to the best of our ability, there are also persons who will seek to do evil to the best of their ability. Then Absalom would say to him, we're taking up from verse 3, "Look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you." Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me. Then I would give him justice." And so it was, whenever anyone came near to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. In this manner, Absalom acted toward all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. This goes to show that there are persons who will act nicely, who will treat you well, just to further their own intentions. Verse 7. Now it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said to the king, "Please, let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt at Geshur in Syria, saying, 'If the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord.' And the king said to him, 'Go in peace.' So he arose and went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, 'As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron.' And with Absalom went 200 men invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city, from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. Now a messenger came to David, saying, 'The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom.' So David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, 'Arise, and let us flee, or we shall not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us, and strike the city with the edge of the sword." We'll pause there again. Let's go back to the time when David is on the run from Saul. He's not on the run from Saul anymore. He's king. But yet again, he's on the run. And why is he running? Because his own son is plotting against him. David did not have to be in this situation, but because of the choices that he made, he found himself in this adverse situation. He found himself at a point where his own family was seeking to harm him and to take his life. And the king's servants said to the king, "We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands." Then the king went out with all his household after him, but the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king went out with all the people after him and stopped at the outskirts. Then all his servants passed before him, and all the Cherethites, all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath, passed before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. In fact, you came only yesterday. Should I make you wander up and down with us today, since I go I know not where? Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you." But Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servant will be." So David said to Ittai, "Go and cross over." Then Ittai the Gittite and all his men and all the little ones who were with him crossed over. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kedron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness. There was Zadok also, and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had finished crossing over from the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show me both it and his dwelling place. But if he says thus, 'I have no delight in you,' here I am. Let him do to me as seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait in the plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." Therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, as they remained there. So David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and wept as he went up, and he had his head covered and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping as they went up. Then someone told David, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David said, "O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness." Now it had happened when David had come to the top of the mountain where he worshipped God, there was Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city, and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant. Then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do you not have Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? Therefore it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Indeed, they have there with them their 2 sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them you shall send me everything you hear. So Hushai, David's friend, went into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. We find in this chapter so many instances where persons who originally followed David, persons who were on his side, were now turning against him. His own people, David's people that he ruled, were now following the whims of Absalom, many of them, I should say. And David finds himself once more as the minority. David, I'm sure, was remembering the time when he was on the run from Saul, remembering the times when God delivered him, but also remembering the painful periods that he spent out, camping at different places, running, hiding, and now he was doing that again. When we do not follow God's will for our lives, we find ourselves in situations that cripple us. We find ourselves in situations that hurt us. And this is not in any way to suggest that when we follow Christ, we won't meet upon rough and tough situations. We will. However, there's a different type of pain that you feel when the consequences of your actions come into play. David is facing the consequences of not following God's will for his life. He goes in to another man's wife. He was supposed to have his kingdom set up, established forever, but now because of his mistakes, his own son is fighting against him. There is hope in this situation though. Even when we place ourselves in situations where God is not at the center, even when we place ourselves in situations that is not good for, that are, I think I'll do the end again. Even when we place ourselves in situations knowingly that harm us, God is still waiting to lift us back up again. There's a chance that we will still face the consequences. Many times we do. But asking for forgiveness when we come before Christ, He is with us in our challenges. He's not only with us, but He lifts us up. He heals our brokenness and He forgives our sins. David, his sins are forgiven him. Although he's facing this terrible circumstance, David still has faith and hope in God. He still accepts his consequences with faith because he serves a God that is not only forgiving but merciful. Let's come before Christ and ask Him to forgive us, and He will.